I met her on the third night after I moved in. The pipes in my bathroom made this low groan whenever the water heater kicked in, like the building itself was tired of pretending to hold together. I was sitting by the window with a sketchbook on my lap, half drawing, half dozing, when a soft knock came from the other side of the wall, 3 short taps. "Sorry," she called out, voice slightly muffled. That sound travels through my ceiling. That was the first time I heard her, my landlady, Nora. When I saw her the next morning, she was standing by the mailboxes, holding a mug that said, "World's okayest cook." She wasn't what I expected, not severe or motherly, just self-contained. Hair tied back, plain shirt, a kind of comfortable gravity about her. "You're the new tenant?" she asked, squinting a little, like sunlight made her cautious. "Yeah, the one with the noisy water heater," I said. That made her laugh, short and genuine. "Good. Then I don't have to pretend it's a ghost." After that, things settled into a rhythm. I'd see her watering the plants by the entrance or carrying groceries, sometimes with her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear, talking to someone she never seemed eager to hang up with. She always nodded when she passed me, that small polite smile that doesn't stay long enough to mean anything. Except once, at the mailbox again, she asked if I liked coffee. "I live on it," I said. She nodded toward her door. "Come by tomorrow morning, then. I make too much." I said sure, though I didn't sleep much that night. Her apartment smelled faintly of orange peel and dusted books. There were stacks of paperbacks near the window, some turned face down like they'd been interrupted mid-thought. She poured coffee into chipped mugs and said, "I never learned to make small cups." I remember watching her hands. They moved slow, deliberate, like she'd decided years ago not to rush through anything that mattered. We didn't talk about much, just weather, rent, the cat that sometimes slept on my steps. But it felt oddly safe, like we'd both been orbiting quiet rooms for too long. When she laughed at something I said, a clumsy joke about the groaning pipes, her thumb brushed the rim of her cup. I noticed the faint line of a ring mark on her finger, pale against her skin. I didn't ask. After that morning, it became something unspoken. I'd hear the kettle whistle downstairs around 8, and by instinct, I'd find myself walking down. Sometimes she'd already have 2 cups ready. Sometimes she'd just glance at me like she'd been expecting it. Nothing was said about it. It just happened. Then came the heat wave, thick, sleepless air pressing through the windows. That night, I was lying shirtless by the fan, trying to draw but only managing a page of half-started lines. My phone buzzed once. "Nora, it's too hot to sleep alone, stripped down." I froze. For a second, I thought maybe she'd sent it by mistake, or that it was a joke, something light to break the heat. But the message sat there, steady, unapologetic. I typed "ha," then erased it. Typed "you mean the weather?" Erased that too. The fan kept clicking as it turned. Outside, the pipes groaned again, low and familiar, and I realized I didn't know if I wanted the sound to stop. I just stared at the message, wondering what exactly she meant, and whether she was waiting for me to find out. I didn't answer her text that night. Didn't need to. The next morning, I found 2 mugs already set out on her counter, steam rising from one. She didn't mention the message, and I didn't either. But something in the air had shifted, not heavier, just noticed. She was wearing a loose t-shirt and linen pants, her hair tied up in a lazy knot that looked like it might fall apart any second. She slid my cup toward me. "You sleep at all?" "Barely. He'll do that." Her tone was light, but there was a flicker of something unreadable, half daring, half regret. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. We sat across from each other, saying nothing for a long time. The window buzzed with the sound of summer insects. Her fan clicked on and off. At one point, she said quietly, "You remind me of my son's friend. He used to stay here sometimes. Drew in a sketchbook all the time, too. You even hunched the same way." That landed like something she hadn't meant to say out loud. "How old's your son?" I asked. 26. Lives in Portland. We don't talk much." She smiled, but her eyes stayed on her mug. "I was too young when I had him. too young to know what not to say. I didn't know what to do with that, so I folded the napkin in front of me until it looked like a small paper square. She glanced at it, then at me, and said, almost teasing, "You're the neatest tenant I've ever had." "Yeah, well," I said, "someone's got to balance your chaos." That made her laugh, and the sound loosened something in the room, like an invisible knot untied. Later, I helped her move a box of old books from the hallway. She tried to take one end, but I insisted, pretending it was heavier than it was. She rolled her eyes and said, "You'll ruin your back trying to look chivalrous." "I'm fine," I said. "I'm young." "Don't remind me," she muttered, soft, but the edge of honesty was there. We set the box down near her bookshelf. A few covers had gathered dust. One had a pressed flower stuck between its pages. She reached for it, brushed it off, then paused. "That was from before the divorce," she said. "I keep meaning to throw it out. Then I don't." I watched her thumb over the petals, fragile and faded. For a moment, it didn't feel like we were landlady and tenant. Just two people who'd both been left waiting for something to end differently. When I turned to leave, she touched my forearm, quick, almost like a reflex. "Thanks for the help," she said. Her hand lingered for half a breath too long, then withdrew. Later, when I was back upstairs, I caught myself pressing that same spot on my arm, like I could still feel her there. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few days felt strange, like we'd slipped into a rhythm neither of us had agreed to. Morning coffee, a few shared errands, silence that said more than talk ever could. But then, she stopped opening her door in the mornings. No coffee, no sound from downstairs except the hum of the fridge through the floorboards. I told myself she was busy, or tired, or just reclaiming her space. Still, I found myself pausing by her door each day, listening for the kettle whistle that didn't come. By the fourth morning, I caved and texted her. "Me, all quiet down there. You okay?" "Nora, fine. Just working on something." That was it. No period at the end, her version of distance. When she finally appeared again, it was late evening. She was carrying groceries, arms full, a strand of hair stuck to her cheek. I stepped out without thinking. "Here, let me." She hesitated before handing them over. "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "I want to." Inside, her kitchen looked different. Cleaner, emptier. The extra mug I'd been using was gone from the counter. "You redecorating?" I asked. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "Just trying to make space." "For what?" She didn't say. We unpacked in silence. Her movements were sharper, precise. When she reached for a jar, our hands brushed. She pulled back fast, too fast. The jar clinked against the counter. "Sorry," she murmured. I wanted to ask what changed, why she'd pulled away. But her face was turned toward the cupboard, her profile calm, unreachable. Then came a knock, sudden, familiar. It was her friend, Mara, the one who always parked crooked outside. She peeked into the kitchen, smile fading just slightly when she saw me. "Oh," Mara said. "Didn't know you had company." "Just helping with groceries," Nora said quickly. Too quickly. Mara's eyes flicked between us, not accusing, just aware. "Right. Well, don't let me interrupt." I mumbled a goodbye and left before she could say anything else. Outside, the air was cool. I leaned against the railing, trying to sketch, but every line turned into her outline, her hand, her shoulder, her mouth half-formed. Later that night, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, then a soft knock. When I opened the door, she was there, sweater over her nightshirt, arms crossed. "Sorry about earlier," she said. "Mara, she likes to make stories out of nothing." "It's fine," I said, but my voice came out low, rougher than I meant. She looked at me then. Really looked. "You shouldn't read into things, you know." "I don't," I lied. She almost smiled. "Good." Then she stepped closer, just a fraction, and reached up, brushing a bit of charcoal from my cheek. Her fingers lingered, soft and sure. For a second, neither of us breathed. Then she let her hand drop, whispering, "You missed a spot." and walked away. We started taking walks in the evenings. No plan to it. It just happened one night when the power went out and the air inside became unbearable. "Come on," she said, holding a small flashlight. "You'll suffocate up there." We walked the block twice, talking about nothing, the smell of rain, the way streetlights hum. I kept close to the edge of the sidewalk, letting her have the center, though she teased me for it. "Chivalry's not dead after all," she said. "Just quieter," I replied. The second time the power went out that week, I found myself already waiting by her door before she opened it. We didn't need the flashlight that night. The moon was enough. She told me about her ex-husband, not directly, just pieces. The way he'd never unpacked his boxes even after 5 years. How silence had filled the rooms before the anger ever did. "I used to think staying calm meant staying safe," she said. "Turns out, it just means you vanish slowly." I wanted to say something, that she hadn't vanished, that she was standing right here, but my throat caught. I just nodded. We stopped near the park bench that faced the empty lot. She sat, tucking one leg beneath her. I stayed standing, hands in pockets, unsure whether to join her. "You can sit, you know," she said, not looking at me. "I might not get up," I said, trying to make it sound light. But she smiled, faintly. Maybe that's the point. The street was quiet except for a dog barking somewhere far off. I watched her trace a line on the bench with her finger, the same slow rhythm she stirred her coffee with. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "Mara asked if I was lonely." My heart kicked once. "And what did you tell her?" "That I wasn't." She paused. But I was lying. Something in me unraveled. All the small, held-back words from the past weeks pressed against my ribs. "I think about you," I said, not looking at her. "Probably more than I should." She turned, studying me like she was trying to memorize the moment or destroy it. "You shouldn't say that." "I know. But you did." "I did." The silence stretched. She rubbed her palms together, the sound small but sharp in the night. "I don't know what this is," she said finally. "And that scares me." I stepped closer, close enough to see the tired lines beneath her eyes, the faint sheen of sweat along her neck. My hand twitched, almost reached for hers, then stopped. "You don't have to be scared," I said softly. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. For a second, it felt like everything that had been circling between us finally stood still. Then she asked, barely audible, "Do you?" The next morning, she wasn't there. No kettle, no clatter of mugs, no faint hum of her old radio through the floorboards. Just quiet. That kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. I told myself she'd slept in or gone out early. But by the third day, the silence started to feel deliberate. When I finally saw her, it was from my window. She was standing by her car, phone pressed to her ear, suitcase in the trunk. A man's voice echoed faintly through the speaker. Too deep, too easy with her name. She didn't see me watching. Later, I heard footsteps downstairs and the soft thud of her door closing. I went down, hand half raised to knock, but stopped when I heard laughter, hers. A sound I'd memorized, but it was different this time. Unfamiliar. So I walked back upstairs. That night, my sketchbook stayed open but blank. Every page I tried to start came out wrong, either too much or not enough. Around midnight, I wrote a message I never sent. Me. Unsent, did I do something? Me. Unsent, you said you weren't lonely. Me. Unsent, I missed the coffee. I deleted them all. The next evening, I ran into Mara by the mailbox. She looked at me with a half-smile that wasn't quite kind. "Nora's out of town," she said. "Family stuff. Everything okay?" "She didn't tell you?" I shook my head. "Oh." Mara adjusted her purse strap. "Her son's visiting. He hasn't seen her in years." Something inside me dropped. Not jealousy exactly, just this dull ache of being reminded where I didn't belong. For the next few days, I heard voices downstairs. 2, sometimes 3. A man's laughter. The clatter of pans. Once, someone playing guitar, badly. I caught glimpses through the window. Her leaning on the counter, smiling softly at someone who looked just a few years older than me. Her son. And suddenly everything made sense. The space she'd made, the way she'd pulled away. The reminder that she lived in a different kind of world than mine, one where things like me were temporary. On the fifth night, I saw her outside, taking out the trash. She looked up, met my eyes for half a second, then looked away first. That single glance hurt more than if she'd said anything at all. Later, when I finally found the nerve to text, I just typed, "Me. You still making too much coffee?" It showed delivered. Then nothing. I kept checking for the typing bubble that never appeared. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It rained the day she came back. Not a storm, just a soft, endless drizzle that made the whole street smell like wet leaves and tired earth. Her car was parked crooked again. A suitcase leaned against the steps, unopened. I told myself to stay upstairs, to let things be. But my hands moved before my head caught up. One page left half-sketched, pencil still rolling on the table as I went down. She opened the door before I knocked. "You're back," I said, like it wasn't obvious. "I am." She leaned against the frame, arms crossed. There were faint lines beneath her eyes that hadn't been there before. "How was your trip?" "Long," she said. Then, quieter, "He's gone again." "My son." I nodded. The silence stretched between us, not the safe kind we'd shared before, but something sharper, loaded. She stepped aside. "You want coffee?" It wasn't really a question. Inside, everything looked the same, except the extra mug on the counter. Mine was back where it used to be. She filled it without asking how I liked it, like she remembered. We sat at the table, steam rising between us. She didn't meet my eyes. "I shouldn't have disappeared," she said finally. "It wasn't about you." "Doesn't matter," I said, though it did. "You don't owe me. I know I don't." She cut me off gently. "But I still feel like I do." There was a long pause. Rain ticked against the window. She exhaled, rubbing her temple. "You scare me a little," she said. "Not you. The way this feels. It's been a long time since I wanted something I shouldn't." I didn't know what to do with that. My chest felt tight, full of every word I hadn't said for weeks. "You think I don't?" I said quietly. "Half the time I'm just waiting for you to tell me to stop coming down here." Her hand twitched on the table. Not toward me, just unsure. "Would you?" "Probably not." That made her laugh, the soft, broken kind that sounds like it's holding back tears. She looked up then, eyes clear but tired. "We can't." "I know," I said. "We don't have to." And still, neither of us moved. I reached out, not to take her hand, just to trace the handle of my mug, close enough that my fingers brushed hers. The touch was small, unplanned, but it felt like stepping into the center of something that had been circling us for months. She didn't pull away this time. After a moment, she whispered, "You should finish your drawing." "I will," I said. "Tomorrow." Her mouth curved into something halfway between a smile and surrender. "Okay," she said. That was all. But it was enough. By late September, the air had cooled enough for sleep to come easy again. The pipes still groaned every now and then, same as always, but it didn't bother me anymore. Some sounds, I'd learned, just mean you're not alone. Our mornings fell into a quiet rhythm again, slower this time, easier. I'd come down at 8:47, like clockwork, and she'd already be halfway through her first cup. No more tension, no pretending it wasn't what it was. Just two people sharing air, sharing time. Sometimes she'd read while I drew. Sometimes I'd fix the window latch that stuck every other day. Once, she brought out her son's old records and said, "He never listened to these. Thought they were too quiet." We played one anyway. There wasn't a moment where anything officially changed. No confession, no kiss that reset the world. Just gradual gravity. Small things slipping into place. One evening, I came home to find a thermos sitting outside my door. Inside, still warm, was her coffee, black, the way she'd learned I liked it now. A note underneath, folded twice. "Too hot to sleep again. If you're awake, come down." She was on the bench when I got there. The same one we'd sat on that night in the rain, now dry and silvered with age. I handed her the empty thermos. "You still make too much," I said. Old habits, she replied. We sat without talking. Streetlights flickered on, washing everything in that pale orange that makes the world look half-remembered. After a while, she said, you ever think we made it harder than it needed to be? Probably, I said. But I think that's how you know it's real. She smiled at that, small, tired, true. The silence stretched out, but it wasn't heavy, just full, like breath held and released. When she stood, she brushed her fingers against my sleeve, almost absent-mindedly. You still draw late? Yeah, I said. Mostly you. She shook her head, smiling. You should find better subjects. Doubt I could. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but didn't. Just turned toward her steps, paused, and said, coffee at 8:47. I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. When she went inside, I sat there a while longer, sketchbook on my knees. The street was quiet, the pipes beneath the building murmuring like distant thunder. And for the first time, it didn't feel like waiting. It just felt like life, slow, imperfect, quietly shared. Later, when I finally went back upstairs, I drew the scene as it was. 2 mugs, a rain-marked bench, a small space between hands not yet touching. Nothing to explain, nothing to fix. Just the kind of peace that takes the long way around. I don't know if we ever said we were in love, but we were there. And sometimes, that's the same thing.